Hi everyone, welcome back to another Photoshop tutorial based on backgrounds. In a previous video using this image, I showed you how to extend out your backdrops or remove unwanted areas from the edges. If I just unclick here, should show you what it sort of looked like before. As I also mentioned, for this brand in particular, I like to change out the background. So instead of using the ones that were shot in camera, I insert a solid colour background that is perfectly matched to their sort of colour library, just to make sure that every single asset that I provide is consistent. It's not for everyone, it doesn't have to be applied to every brand, but that is sort of my aesthetic. I do a lot of background replace just because I really like the sharp, clean and crisp look of final images. Other work that I do can have like gradient background, it depends on the lighting, but for this brand we are really sort of particular, and we like to take away everything and sort of rebuild it in. So if we sort of get started with what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the two-tone again. It's going to be in sort of similar colours but not exactly the same. But what I'm going to start off doing is cut out this area of detail, so like the tube, the glass, the ingredients and the shadows. We might have time to show you how to rebuild in shadows or use the shadows we already have, but we'll see how we get on. So what I've done is I've cleaned up the image as much as possible. I haven't made any other sort of local adjustments on the assets. I will be brightening things, adding some contrast, making sure the colours really pop and a colour match to the actual products. But I tend to do that after I've done the cutouts, after the backgrounds are in, so I can see what the contrasts will look like against the actual things that they will be sent to the client as. So first of all, I'm going to use the selection tool, which is on your left-hand panel, sort of where your magic wand usually sits. And it has started to get a lot better in Photoshop. It's, started to be a lot more consistent with the areas it's picking up, but that doesn't mean that it does it perfectly. So I still have to go back in with my lasso tool or pen tool, depending on if I've got to cut out curves. So here's just a very basic view of what the object select tool will pick up for me. What I'm going to start to do is where there's really obvious areas of imperfection, I'm just going to go to my lasso tool, and I use the polygonal lasso, which is quite structured. It's quite a weird one for people to use, but it's just something that I always used when I was starting out. It's sort of how my first mentor taught me, and then I'll go back in with the pen tool to make sure all the sort of curves are perfected. So I'm just going to work through this detail and I'll come back to you when it's done. Just a note for the shadows, while I'm doing it this way for now, I'm just going to do sort of a very rough selection around that, and I'll layer mask it and then paint back out the details that I don't need, or I'll add in a fakey shadow, as I like to refer to them as, just to make sure sort of there's a good match and good contrast. Obviously I will pick out all the key shadows underneath these boxes and sort of things that are really solid, but when it's a shadow a bit like what's to this side, for this shadow just that's a bit long and extended, they're the ones that could be a bit of a pain. So all of these sharp shadows I will keep in, from like under the apple. Just another quick thought, when you're using the lasso tools, you can use the Alt key, which will remove parts of the area. So if you hold down on the Alt key and want to remove this area, say you click down on the Alt key and then start to click, and then just make sure you close that panel, and then that will delete the object. If you want to add back in detail like this area of the apple here, you'll hold down on the Shift key, and then again you'll draw around the object and then make sure that loop is closed, and then double click and it will make the selection for you. If you make a mistake while you're making the selection, then you can always click the backspace button on your keyboard So let's say I was trying to remove this and I went one step too far. If I sort of click there and that's not the right thing, if I click the backspace button on my keyboard, then that will remove the previous anchor point. Yeah, there is basically the main sort of mask for the object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull up my rulers. So you can do that by doing view, rulers, and then tick the option on. And you can also do Control and R, which will turn them on and off, as you can see there. So turn my rulers on. And I'm just going to make note of where the horizon line was by dragging a sort of guide down to the horizon line and just popping it there for reference in a minute. With this area selected, I'm going to make sure that the layer I want to work with is selected, and then click on the layer mask tool, which is the rectangle with this circle in it. Just click that, and then I'm just going to toggle off those other layers for now. So as you can see, that's the cutout we have, and we're ready to insert a backdrop. I'll do any perfection checks once the background's in, and because I'll be able to see sort of any color contrast in the edges. So what I'm going to do is click to the layer underneath the layer that I want to work with, and I'm going to just use that horizon line to draw the deck with the marquee tool, and then I'm going to go to my adjustments layer, the sort of half black half white circle, and insert a solid color. I'm just going to paste in that hex code and click OK. And then what I'm going to also do is click underneath that layer, and I'm going to do a full bleed of the actual backdrop using the marquee tool. Use the adjustments panel, go back up to solid color, and then I'm going to select the background hex code that the clients use. And there we go, sort of dropped in. We can see because the background I had to photograph with wasn't quite as deep and bright, we're going to have to adjust the shadows with a different layer with different tools. And to remove the guide, you can either drag it back up to the top, or you can click Control and the colon key, which will remove that. And as you can see, those backgrounds are now in. So what we can do now to make it feel like it's part of the image, what I normally do is add some noise or some grain back into those layers. So I would go to my colour fill tab for the background. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to convert it to a smart object. So anything I do to the object, like any filters that I add to it, can be changed and it won't affect sort of the shape of that background colour. I'm just going to do the same for the deck as well. Right click and convert it to smart object. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate up to filter, go down to noise, add noise, and then you can sort of play with how much noise you want to use in the image. Obviously, if you go really far, that doesn't look good for anyone. So I tend to keep it, anywhere between like 3 and 10. Because I just want a little bit of texture added back in. I normally have the distribution set to Gaussian, and you can flick between sort of monochromatic and not. I tend to leave that unticked because it doesn't create as much image with the grain. It depends on your style, what you want to do, but I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Click OK. And then I'm going to do it for the other one. Click on my colour fill 2, go back up to filter, and then that exact same setting will be at the top there for add noise. But if you want to add it again, you can like scroll down all the way to there and click on add noise as well. But I'm just going to repeat what it was doing and then click OK. So now we have some nice noise added back in, just to make the image feel a little bit more real. And as I said, if you go back to your layers panel, you can now see that the color fill has a smart filter on it because it's a smart object. And if I ever wanted to change sort of that background, the amount of noise that's in it, I can click in this, double click the add noise smart filter and change it there. And also what you can do is if you want a complete background change, you can double click into the smart layer, which will pull that up, and then you can just change your your background as normal. So if I just randomly clicked on this, clicked OK, and then resaved my layer, Control S, or by going to File and Save, the image that has now changed and will be in your history panel. So as you can see there, that was the updated smart object, and that is the actual colour we need. So I'm just going to save that file. And yeah, that is how you put in fakey backgrounds. And we will start to change the shadows and show you that process in the next video. But I hope that helps. I hope it's clear for now. But if you've got any questions, let me know and I'll try and help you out.